how do you handle panic attacks? Number one, pharmacology. So we can use an agent like an SSRI, SNRI. We got to be careful with some of this stuff like venlafaxine, which can, in some patients, make anxiety a little bit worse. But people will say, but Dr. K, if I take the medicine and I stop taking the medicine, will the panic attack return? The answer is probably. But this is where we get to number two, skills training. This is where things get really fun. So what are the skills that we want to train with panic attacks? The first skill that we want to train is breaking vicious mental cycles, to snap out of it. So here's what happens in a panic attack. I have a thought. And once I have a thought, it activates my sympathetic nervous system. Cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline. Okay? Now here's the big problem. I have a series of cell clusters along my spine called the sympathetic chain ganglia. So they go all along the spine. My thoughts connect to nerves. Nerves travel down my sympathetic chain ganglia, activate my sympathetic chain ganglia. My heart rate increases, my blood pressure increases. The sympathetic chain ganglia go to these little areas right above my kidneys called my adrenal cortices, where they secrete cortisol and all this kind of stuff. Here's the big problem. All of these are hormones, and hormones are chemical messengers that don't act locally. They travel through the bloodstream and they activate every part of our body, including our brain. And adrenaline does something really scary in the brain. It makes possibilities feel real. It makes potential dangers feel like real dangers. So it also increases the speed of our thoughts. It increases the activation of our emotional centers. So this increases the number of thoughts we have. The more thoughts we have, the more it activates our chain ganglia. The more thoughts we have, more chain ganglia activation. There we have a panic attack. So how do we break this cycle? We break it in the thinking and we break it in the physiology. So if we activate the parasympathetic nervous system through something like a meditation technique, right? Where y'all will see this kind of thing, like, that people used to do in movies where they're breathing into a paper bag. Why are they breathing into a paper bag? Really fascinating. So when your sympathetic nervous system is activated, your respiratory rate increases. I start to hyperventilate. When I hyperventilate, two things happen. My O2 increases, but this is more important. My CO2 decreases. This happens way more than O2 increasing. Our O2, really ventilation is more about blowing off CO2. So now my CO2 level is really, really, really low. This can make me feel lightheaded. So when I breathe into a paper bag, I start breathing less oxygen and more CO2. The concentration of air inside the bag is CO2, 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 and then just one O2. The more I breathe into it, y'all get that? It's just like I'm exhaling CO2, I'm inhaling O2. Now, this is the really cool thing. As the O2 concentration in the bag decreases, as this goes down, I require deeper breaths. Now I need to breathe more deeply. I don't want to just breathe at the surface. I don't want to just let this stuff come in and out. What I need to do is take a deep breath. I need to inhale everything in the bag to get this O2 that's at the bottom. Does that kind of make sense? Because if I breathe in and out, right, that's going to be right at the surface. At the top of the paper bag is where it's going to be full of CO2. So I need to breathe deeply. Once I breathe deeply, my respiratory rate is now going down. If my respiratory rate goes down, my thinking goes down. The speed of your mind is related to the length of your exhalation. This is what we learned in meditation. Length of exhalation is very, very, very important. Slow exhalation will slow down your mind. So we activate the parasympathetic nervous system through things like breathing techniques. And then if we break the cycle over here, then we can break the cycle on both ends. Now, here's why pharmacology helps with skills training. If you look at studies basically on any illness, what we find is that if you combine psychotherapy with medicine, the effect is symbiotic. So they help each other out. The question is why? So if I have a level 100 panic attack and I have a level 50 skill, this is insufficient. So what happens is if I try to use my skills, it's not enough, right? And then the panic attack blows over my ability to regulate it, so I get GG'd out. The cool thing about the medicine is the medicine brings it down to level 50. And now my skills are enough. So now Now that the size of the panic has been artificially reduced by the pharmacology, my skills are able to handle it. And then something cool happens. I level up my skill. Each time I use it, I get better. And if I'm successful, then my brain automatically starts doing it more and more and more and more and more, right? So each time I use it, I'm leveling up my skills because this is on board. Then what we can do is remove the medicine. And now, even if I have a level 100 panic attack, my skills have leveled up enough. A really great example of this is ADHD medication. So ADHD medication has a half-life of about, let's say, 24 hours. I mean, it really doesn't have if you take short-acting like methylphenidate or something, the half-life is like 6 hours. But in about 5 days, all of your ADHD medicine is out of your system and you'll start going through withdrawal. So the effect of the stimulant medication is gone. But if you look at clinical trials, the benefits of ADHD medication last for up to 6 months after you stop taking it. How does that work? Because the medicine is out of your system. And it's because when you use medicine, it allows you to level up your skills. Hey y'all, if you're interested in applying some of the principles that we share to actually create change in your life, check out Dr. K's Guide to Mental Health. There are actually two sources for anxiety. One is cognitive and one is physiologic. For the majority of people, reassurance becomes something that you become dependent on. You're not really dealing with the root of the anxiety, and it sort of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where the more socially anxious you become, the more awkward you appear, and then it kind of becomes this vicious cycle. So check out the link in the bio and start your journey today. Then we get to the really fun part. This is the stuff that there is, what's the right word to use here? I think there is promising evidence for. So your experience of a panic attack is not just acute, right? So we talked about this cycle once you start panicking. But if we look at SSRIs, what do SSRIs do? They increase serotonin transmission in your brain. But in my experience as a clinician, there are all kinds of things that you can do to alter the baseline state of your nervous system. So people with anxiety and panic attacks, I assume, this one is actually a little bit of a question mark. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't looked at data on this, but I would bet money. This is definitely true for people who have anxiety. They have a baseline nervous system that is wired. Let's say here's the parasympathetic side. Here's the sympathetic side. Most human beings are about here. They live over here. They live in a high alertness state. So small things can tip them over the edge, right? Whereas for a normal person or someone who isn't wired like this, they need a large stressor to tip them over the edge. So we see this because HRV, if y'all remember what HRV is, heart rate variability is low in people with anxiety disorders. So their heart rate is normally around like 90, whereas most people will run around, let's say, 70. And people who have very active parasympathetic nervous systems and have a high amount of heart rate variability, their heart rate will be 40, they'll be bradycardic at baseline. Normally this is dangerous, but these people are like people like athletes. So their capacity to handle stress is way higher. So you can alter the baseline state of your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. One of the things that we talk about is diet, okay? So highly serotonergic diets. So to support the gut bacteria that produce serotonin, okay? So this is, I kid you guys not. There is a bacteria called ruminobacteria. Ruminobacteria. This is the bacteria that makes people ruminate. The level of ruminobacteria in people with anxiety is high. In people without anxiety, ruminobacteria is low. You can also do things like alter your baseline sympathetic, parasympathetic balance. This can be done through exercise, but is better done through mind-body practices. Things like yoga, Tai Chi, and then meditation does this as well. So this goes to this question that somebody else asked. Let me see if I can find it. Do you have patients who have physiologic anxiety, like no thoughts bring on panic? Absolutely. So there's a whole section in Dr. K's Guide to Anxiety where we talk about physiologic anxiety. This is, I think, one of the biggest mistakes that we make. If y'all want to know why mental illness is getting worse, it's because 80% of our mental health professionals have very little to no formal training in physiology. It's not their fault. We made a big mistake many years ago where we separated out the mind from the body. And so as psychiatrists, one of the reasons I love being a psychiatrist is because you get training in the body. And I believed a long time ago, right? This is because I studied like alternative medicine and stuff. I thought that there's like, it's crazy. There's no way that the mind is not connected to the body, because I went to India and, learned all this stuff. And I was like, wow, this is changing people's physiology. There were patients who would come for treatment at some of these ashrams, right? And they would come in with things like panic disorders, generalized anxiety disorder. And from day 1 to day 30, I would see a profound difference in their like anxiety and panic. And I didn't understand those things clinically. It's just, I saw this person, they were like fidgety, they're moving around, they're uncomfortable, they start hyperventilating, they have to step out of the yoga class on day 2. They skip the yoga class in the evening, and then by day 30, they're like chilling, they're happy, they're whatever. I saw profound changes, right? Using things like diet, using things like mind-body practices, meditation. There wasn't so much exercise there. They would mostly do this stuff. Oh, there's one more other thing. One dimension that I forgot. This is where we get fun. So when I think about evidence-based treatment for panic disorder, this is high level of evidence, and then we go all the way down. And some people are going to have issue with this, which is totally fine, to low evidence. This is not technically low evidence. This is probably higher than number 3, but I personally find that your mileage may vary with number 4. And this is the deep psychoanalytic work. So if you look at theories of psychotherapy, they say there's something going on in your unconscious. There's some kind of complex or psychological thing, or defense mechanism activation, or like some kind of archetypal like discongruence or unconstellated archetype or something. Like that depends on what you're, are you from the object relations school, or are you from the Jungian school? Are you from the Kleinian school? Like, depending on what it is, there's some deep complex that if you address that complex, you will be cured. Now, I have seen this happen. So I do some scar work, which is kind of in the same ballpark, arguably. Like, it's in the same ballpark is in the sense that it's not diet, right? So diet is like one ballpark, and there's doing deep stuff in the mind. The problem is that from my experience as a clinician, this is like a your mileage may vary kind of thing. How long does this take to do? I don't know. Does it work for everybody? Seems like it doesn't. Does it work for some people? Yes. So it's not that there isn't evidence for it. It's that the duration of treatment is like, I don't know. The probability of treatment is, I don't know. Because I've had patients who will have been in psychoanalysis for like 5 years. And then they'll like come in, and then we'll start doing like this kind of stuff, and they get way better. So then it's like, I don't know how to understand that. I don't know, like, does this mean you had a bad psychoanalyst? Does this mean that psychoanalysis was not effective for your particular origin of panic disorder? Like, I don't know. And this is the problem with the psychoanalytic research, is there's so much variability within patients and providers that it's like hard to say. But there's good evidence that this stuff like works, right? So it's not that it doesn't work. It's just, I don't know how long it takes, and I don't know what the probability is. But this stuff is great, man. I love doing this work. This stuff is fun. Like, it's like the most gratifying moments as a psychiatrist is with bucket number 4. Because you have, you talk to someone, they have some breakthrough. Like, I had a patient once who had anxiety and panic problems. And then like we had this weird like past life kind of thing that we processed, where she had this memory. I've told this story before. The reason I tell it over and over again is because she's given me permission to share it. But she, like, the origin of her anxiety is like she has these really, really vivid memories of being underneath the floor with booted feet on top. And she knows if she makes a sound, they're going to find her, and then it's all over. That's her experience of this anxiety and panic. Did this ever happen to her? No. Is this a past life? Who the hell knows? I think not just as likely, I don't know probability or odds here, but I think there is a very reasonable psychological explanation that has nothing to do with past lives, which is like she saw a movie about the Holocaust when she was 4, and it was really scary, and it sort of formed a psychological injury. I think that is like a very, very plausible, reasonable, even more reasonable explanation than past life kind of crap. The key thing, though, is that sometimes in therapy, you get through these breakthroughs where you find the origin of your panic and you release that emotional knot of energy, and then you feel way better, okay? This is how you treat panic. If y'all want more info on this kind of stuff, check out the anxiety guide. Hey all, hope you enjoyed today's video. We talk about a bunch of topics like this on the channel, so be sure to subscribe for more. If you're already subscribed, GG, and we'll see you in chat.